All right. Thank you very much, Ben Maki, for joining me today on our Environmental Science Graduate Students podcast. I'm really excited to chat with you. I think we have a lot in common, and you have pretty exceptional life experiences and adventures that you've been on that I really would love to chat about. Um, and so I want to add one disclaimer before we get started that this podcast is not endorsed by UC Riverside, although we are graduate students at UC Riverside. We're just colleagues that are having a conversation with one another. And the main goal of this podcast is to bring the department closer together while we're far apart due to COVID. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Definitely excited to get a little chat going. And I mean, you and I haven't had the chance to interact so much, so this will be good for us to get to know each other too. But yeah, my name's Ben Maki, as Wynn said. I'm a second year student at UCR in Sam Ying's lab. So we're doing a lot of like metal biogeochemistry and kind of looking at natural groundwater pollution sources and mechanisms of release for geogenic metals into groundwater systems.
And so I know we just chatted about this, but I'd love to share with the listeners also what you're up to right now. You're outside. You're on a excursion.
Yes. We're taking advantage of the California sun and also the odd hours graduate student schedule, but we're actually hanging out at the park. We went surfing this morning and kind of sneaking in a Friday off, trading for a Sunday work day. So trying to get out while there's a few less people with the virus raging on and such.
Yeah, it looks beautiful where you're at. I definitely love getting out there and experiencing the outdoors as well. Is surfing your main thing these days? Is that your kind of main go-to hobby?
It's been, I don't know. I kind of started surfing when I was in Washington, and it was kind of a different ball game, a lot more driving to get out to the beach. And in California, it's definitely much more accessible and much warmer, which is nice. But I kind of grew up snowboarding and skateboarding more, and sort of more recently I've been getting more into surfing. With COVID, the surfing's been nice because you can kind of stay a little bit more distanced. You know, you don't really have to interact with people face to face. You kind of just, paddle out and find your own space. And then, if people get too close, you can just zoom off in another direction. So it's definitely been kind of what we've spent the majority of our free time doing, especially during COVID, because it's just relatively accessible given the circumstance that we're living in right now. Something we can do safely and have some fun at the same time. So
yeah, definitely. So you said that you've done you grew up doing a lot of snowboarding and stuff. I recently started getting into backcountry snowboarding. I don't know if you've done much of that, like hiking out into the wilderness, finding a nice peak with a good bowl on it and just dropping in.
Yeah, I've done a little bit. I went to college at Western Washington University, which is in Bellingham, Washington, kind of just south of the border in Vancouver. And up there we have some awesome mountains in the North Cascades, one of which being Mount Baker. And that was kind of where I spent a lot of my time, my free time during college was up there boarding. And they get pretty epic snowfall up there, and have some really crazy lift accessible terrain. But then if you're, like you said, if you're willing to hike a little bit, you can get into some pretty cool stuff. And I guess I've limited myself because I haven't taken the plunge and dropped in and bought a splitboard yet. But one of these days, it's on the list for sure. But definitely a worthy investment, but a substantial monetary investment as well.
Yeah. Just so listeners know, a splitboard is is a snowboard that can split apart into two and become skis so that you can do like cross country or alpine skiing to get up to your destination, and then you snowboard down from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is yeah, I've been thinking about getting a split board as well. This year I think what I'm gonna
Nice.
do is I got snowshoes,
Oh,
and
nice.
I'm going to go try to hike up to the top of Gorgonio,
Oh,
and
right on.
then with my snowshoes, and then like backpack my snowboard,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and then snowboard down that. It's really intimidating from the top of there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and I'm not
for
that
sure.
good,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's one of my goals this year.
Dude, that's awesome. I think it's a good year to be doing that, you know. Going to the resorts is kind of I've got a pass, but I have yet to use it. I'm a little nervous to go up to like Big Bear, Mammoth, or anything. It just seems like there's probably going to be a lot of people out there,
Oh,
but I
are
don't know.
they actually open? I didn't even know that they were.
Yeah, they're open and
Well,
fully
okay.
running. I think Big Bear opened like 2 weeks back.
Okay. Wow. Big
But
Bear.
yeah,
They have some snow up there still.
I
I thought it.
I guess
Yeah.
so.
Maybe they're making it. Maybe they're
Yeah,
making some snow. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think they make a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you get into to backcountry boarding, is that kind of a, you said it was a more recent
Yeah,
hobby,
it's
or?
yeah, my so like you have your main hobby. My main hobby is climbing.
Okay.
But I can't really, there's this like 2 month window where it's pretty much miserable to climb anywhere.
Hmm.
And so that is when I go do some winter sports, and my partner and I have been this year. We've proclaimed this is going to be the year of suffering. We're going to try to get ourselves through like as cold and miserable as weather as possible.
Yes. Yes.
We're just like, we want to suffer all weekend. Let's go. It's negative
Yeah.
30, perfect. That's what I want to
Yeah.
go do. I'll go camp up
Yes.
there. Um,
Yes.
yeah, last year we tried to do a couple of those like really hardcore winter hikes, and
Hmm.
it was it sent me packing quick. But this
Yeah.
year I'm more prepared. I got myself a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice down jacket and stuff.
Nice.
So anyways, I'm trying to like, it's like a 2 month a year thing that I'm trying
Hmm.
to build into. It's
Yes.
kind of a new thing for me.
Sweet. Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, definitely always fun to try new stuff. So you're kind of doing some like mountaineering pretty much is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
getting
Yep.
up high. Oh
Yep.
man.
Some hard snow.
Yes. Oh, that's
Um,
awesome, man. Nothing more beautiful than being up high in the mountains.
yeah. So one thing that you when we were chatting about this talk, and it's bringing some ideas about what to talk about. You said
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you enjoy camping in the rain. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
always been something that I've found really hard to enjoy. So I'd love to hear like what your techniques are for
Yes.
loving camping in the rain.
Yes. Well, since I grew up in Washington, the rain is a normal part of your regular day to day.
Yeah.
So if you want to go do anything for outside for probably like 6 months out of the year, you got to be willing to mess with a little bit of precipitation. Uh, but it's kind
True.
of nice. It hardens you up a little bit. It keeps the crowds away. A lot less people will be out and about when it's all
Yeah.
crappy out and raining. Um, but yeah, the best strategy that I can offer for making camping in the rain pleasant is to buy a van. that's kind of what we did. We did the tent thing for a while. We spent a lot of
Yeah.
time when I was living in Seattle driving out to the Olympic Peninsula, because it's a rainforest out there actually, but it's kind of this peninsula, the spit of land that comes off of the northwestern end of Washington State, and it's unbelievably beautiful. Just like really pretty coastline, tons of trees, like old growth
Mm-hmm.
forest. Um, Lots of really cool areas where you can go camp like right on the beach. And we used to go out there and tent camp it in the middle of the winter, just because that was like the best time for the surf and also the best time for staying away from the crowd. And yeah, the tent was all right. I
Yeah.
definitely enjoyed the tent, but we eventually invested in a 4x4 van with a camper bed in the back, kind
Oh,
of set up,
wow.
like built out to really work well for what we were doing out there. So that is definitely the biggest piece of advice, I guess, is like having a nice tin shelter that'll steel shelter that'll keep you dry and you don't have to pack up in the wet and the mud is pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a dream of mine. That's definitely on my list. Once I have the
Nice.
finances to do that, it's a big priority. Even for climate, it's just like, oh, it's
Oh
such a
yeah,
pain to set up the tent at the end of the
for sure.
night.
Yep. Your
Yeah.
hands are tired, you're cold.
Yeah. With a van, you can just park anywhere along the side of the road, and that's your campsite. Like with the
Yep.
tent, you gotta find a trail, then hike in, then hike off the trail
Yep.
a ways, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, definitely. It makes your life a little bit easier. And in like
yeah.
Southern California, it's nice because we can come down to the coast and just kind of like hobo camp wherever. Just stick the van on the side of the road and
Yeah.
make some space for ourselves, I guess. Try to stay out of the fray.
Hmm. So you've been talking a lot about your time in Washington. I know you went to your undergrad there
Mhm.
as well, and I'd love to hear more about your experience as an undergraduate and types of research that you were involved in there and how that
Yeah,
kind of brought you here.
absolutely. So yeah, I did my undergraduate at Western Washington University up in Bellingham, Washington, and they have a really cool like sub school up there that's just for environmental science. So it's
Oh,
called Huxley College of the Environment, and it's kind of like a secondary campus that's within the main campus at
yeah.
Western, and they have all kinds of different programs that they run, like environmental science and environmental studies and all kinds of different stuff. And I started as a biology major when I got to school, but it wasn't really working for me. Just
Yeah.
wasn't clicking quite right, and trying to transition from like going to high school to college was a challenge.
Yeah.
But so I ended up like kind of rethinking it and being like, I don't know if I want to be a biology major. I knew I wanted to do science, but I hadn't like nailed it down. And I also love being outside and like exploring.
Yeah.
So I went to Huxley and was like, hey, I really like chemistry. What environmental science should I look at? And they were like, you should check out environmental toxicology. And
Oh.
just by happenstance, pretty much, I ended up like applying into this program that was environmental toxicology focused, and I was just like smitten with it. It was such a cool and applicable science, a cool way to get outside and do something like useful for the planet and useful for the inhabitants, for people, and for other organisms out there. So it's just it clicked well, and then I ended up having like an amazing undergrad advisor who just
Hmm.
like she had designed a set of courses. It was two quarters worth of classes, so like 6 months of classes, where it's called the science and management of contaminated sites. And basically, she had made all these contacts with like different consulting firms and like tribal leaders who were running like environmental cleanup projects on tribal land in Washington State, and folks that were running like big Superfund site cleanup projects, and basically like had a class set up where we got to learn like the ins and outs of like how that process works, like
Right.
who the important parties are, how the work actually gets done, like where the consulting firm comes in, and kind of that whole process, and just seeing that whole, um, what they could do to a site if they had, the money, the time, and the people with the know-how. Take a gross site filled with like a bunch of mercury like Bellingham
Hmm.
Bay, for example, and turn it into like they've just re totally redone the bay. They like dredged out all the nasty sediments, and now they've built this whole beautiful like waterfront space where they have retail and like a museum that talks all about the kind of what had happened there. And
Oh, wow.
it was a pulp and paper mill that ended up polluting a lot of the mercury like back in the 70s and 80s. And then when it got shut down, it was just legacy contamination that stuck around forever. And so they like have the whole process of how they cleaned it up and such. But just really cool seeing how that all kind of ties together. And what she did with that class that was really cool was you did the first quarter where you learned about the process, and you really got a sense for how it all flowed, what the different disciplines of science were that went into this like very comprehensive approach of cleaning up these sites, from the economic side as well as from the science side, as well as from like the feasibility angle. And the second quarter of that class, she had you design a project that basically that fit into that framework in some capacity. And it could either be like a science project or an outreach project.
Yeah.
And so I actually chose a science project and ended up working with one of my lab mates at UCR now, Macon
Oh,
Abernathy.
wow.
We did undergrad together, which was pretty cool. And so we had developed a project where we were looking at changes in arsenic mobility with the addition of iron oxides, which are capable of sorbing arsenic, and then also adding some biological amendments, some plants and some earthworms, and kind of looking at changes in arsenic bioavailability and mobility by adding the iron oxides to that test system. And so we did that project, and it kind of worked the first time. And then I was a little slow because I had done bio first, and then went back and switched into e-tox. So Macon had graduated, and I had another quarter or two, and my advisor was kind of like, hey, if you want to try to do this again, we could do it as a senior thesis. So I was like,
Right.
cool, let's try it. So we just kind of revamped the project and ran it again, and it ended up working much better the second time around. And
Wow.
she ended up hiring me as a TA afterwards for that same science and management of contaminated sites class. And we took some time to like write the paper up and managed to get it published, which was like, before that, I had no concept of like what it took to do research. I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to do research, but I didn't know like what it really entailed and what kind of the process was. So it's just like an unbelievable learning experience, really, to get a feel for that, and to just get the sense of like, oh, I could actually do this. Like I could think through this project and like, make it relevant to other people that are listening to what's going on. So it was a really cool experience.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah, that's why I love applied research too. And one thing that's really that really sucks the most about COVID is that undergraduates are not currently allowed to do research with us on campus. And it
Absolutely.
sounds like that was such a big part of your upcoming as a scientist and coming into science.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a unfortunate disservice of COVID times,
Yeah.
I think, because we used to have like in Sam's lab, we had 2 or 3 undergraduate researchers. Luckily, we still have one, Phoebe, who does statistics, and so she's been helping
Yeah.
with a lot of statistical work, which is cool because she can do it remotely. But yeah, like you said, undergraduate students not being allowed on campus, it definitely makes it challenging when they're going to go apply for graduate school later on, and not having the opportunity to get some exposure to sort of research activities and how they all work. I totally agree with that. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, we're having a similar situation in our lab too. We have several undergraduates who are working on computer work,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think is going to be helpful for them. But it's ending up creating like a bunch of data scientists within our group,
Yeah.
basically. And I mean, I think that's a good thing. We do need that as a society. We need people with all of these computer science skills. But
Oh, absolutely.
but I worry that we might be missing that, like a whole generation of scientists are not going to have lab experience, field experience that they would have had otherwise. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see what this disturbance actually does to science in the coming years.
Yeah, totally. And at the same time, it also kind of pushes people to think about different ways to make remote work more, I don't know, more. Sorry, I got the dog barking.
It's all good.
Make remote work a little more, I don't know, like help move things forward in kind of a different way, like looking at things rather than from like being in the lab, from I don't know, just doing a bunch of like digging into where an issue might be that you could focus your time on once things kind of go back to normal.
Right.
So I mean, I think there's probably a lot of folks out there that are using this time to do a bunch of reading and learning. So hopefully
Yeah.
that's the case. And then out of this, we got a bunch of motivated people when we get done with COVID that just want to charge into some cool projects. I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm also really curious. So Western Washington is the university that you went to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there are so many graduate students in our department that have come from there. What's the pipeline? Like, what's the connection that's bringing all of these Western Washington students to UCR?
Yes, it's really interesting. And funny enough, 3 of those students are in Sam's lab. Macon's in Sam's lab, Miranda Aiken's in Sam's lab,
Yep.
and I'm in Sam's lab, and all 3 of us have the same undergraduate advisor.
Okay, that's the pipeline, maybe.
Yep, Macon and I the same year, and Miranda the year after us.
Nice.
As far as undergrad, they're both ahead of me in the PhD, but I took some time to have some fun after school. But yeah, so it's interesting because Sam and my undergraduate advisor, Ruth Sofield, they've actually never met each other.
No way.
Yeah, and she was supposed to actually come out and give a talk at UCR on her research in the spring this last year. And then COVID happened. So unfortunately, we couldn't make it happen. They were finally going to meet each other because now 3 of her students, her undergraduate students, have moved into Sam's lab. And for me, like when I was originally looking at graduate schools, I was talking to Ruth because she was like my main source of like graduate school inspiration, but also graduate school like application know-how and like trying to figure out how the heck to approach that process. And she had kind of like given me some schools to look at. And I ended up applying to a few. And then like when it all shook out, UCR just kind of made the most sense. But UCR was one of the directions that she pointed me in. And at first I was like, oh, inland Southern California, I don't know if that's for me. I like the rain. I like, gray skies. I like the forest and the mountains. And then I realized like there's mountains all over the place in this area of Southern California. Like Riverside's kind of a cool location because it's like an hour from the beach, an hour from the desert, which is great for you if you're doing a bunch of climbing. And then like an hour from the mountains. So it's kind of like the whole of the donut is Riverside. There's all kinds of yummy stuff to do on the outside. But yeah, so then when I started looking at sort of the research that was going on at UCR, and then once I came down and visited and kind of got a little bit more of a sense for like the community at UCR, and just like especially the way that Sam ran her lab just really worked well for the kind of person that I am and like where my priorities are. And also like the research lined up really well. But yeah, so that was kind of what pulled me into UCR. And yeah, I think it was, I would guess, a similar sort of attraction for Miranda and Macon, but we'd have to ask them. But yeah, there definitely is a little bit of a pipeline. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's wild that they've never met each other. I want to see photos of their meeting when it happens. I want to be in the room. They're
gonna like shake hands, and there's gonna be like lightning bolts.
Best friends instantly.
Yes. Very cool.
So you said that you took some time off of school after you did your undergraduate. I did too.
Nice.
And I definitely thought that was the best choice for me. What did you end up doing during your time off?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird ride, but it ended up working out great in the end. For a really long time, like right after school, I was feeling like there was so much that I wanted to do, and I wanted like an environmental science job right away. So I was like applying to all these environmental science jobs and just like getting nothing back. So not really having much luck. And I ended up working in a restaurant for like 6 months, which actually ended up being really cool because I learned a ton about cooking. It was like a French-Italian restaurant, and it was a husband and wife that ran it, and she was the chef, and he was also an amazing cook, and then like 2 other people. So it was a kind of small little spot, and they had amazing food. I just ended up learning a ton about cooking, and it was a sweet schedule because I was on like 4-day week, like 6-hour days, and then I had a ton of time to like go snowboarding and hang out with my friends. And I grew up in Seattle, so we had just moved back to Seattle, so I got to kind of like
Nice.
reacquaint myself with all my friends from forever ago, and my family's still there, so it was nice in that respect to just kind of like breathe for a little bit and do something totally different, but at the same time motivating to be like, I need to get an environmental science job because this is what I want to do. And then I ended up kind of after that working in a lab that does like efficacy testing for clinical drug trials, which was interesting experience. It was like pretty much just running a ton of ELISA plates, like over and over again all day, which was good. I got really good at pipetting, but it was very repetitive, and like the asks from the supervisors was often like pretty extreme. Like they really wanted a lot to happen in like a single day, and they had like staggered shifts so that they could like maximize like efficiency, and it was a lot. It's kind of intense, and like also not having any control over like what you were doing, and like so much proprietary information that you're like, I want to understand the science better, but like you won't tell me what's in this reagent because Eli Lilly owns it and I can't know what is happening exactly. So it was cool in some respects. I feel like I learned a lot. I definitely realized that I wanted to have a little more control and autonomy over what I was doing. I think that was one of the big things that motivated me to go back to school. Plus the lab experience was definitely helpful. Like as far as my graduate school applications, I'm sure it made a difference. But I also just got some time to like have fun, hang out, take things a little less seriously for a little bit, and then kind of thrust back into school.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that job, it sounds like they need to make a device to like, remove that job from existence or something. Just looking at ELISA plates, there should be a machine that does that. Probably is.
Yes, there's much lower throughput though. They could run like it was like a 12 well plate or something, whereas a human could run a 96 well plate. So it did every step for you, but it could only do one at a time. And the way they would set us up is they'd be like, okay, start one plate and then start another one like 10 minutes later, and then start another one like 10 minutes later. So they'd go through their incubations, and you'd kind of get them off like one and then the next and then the next. And sometimes you'd have them like overlapping, where you had like, one set of plates that had their timer going off for they were going off, and it was adding the first reagent in the procedure. And so you're like trying to make sure you don't put the wrong thing in the wrong plate. And you've got like 6 timers and sometimes like multiple timers going off, and there's all kinds of lab techs like running in circles trying to like handle the chaos. And it was exhausting. It was kind of just like, I don't know if this is for me too long term, but
yeah. Well, it sounds like you're really enjoying your graduate studies now, and we all get to our get to the next step in not a straight path.
Absolutely. For you, how was taking your time off? You said it was pretty helpful for you to take that time as the right thing to do.
Yeah, so I thankfully, when I was in my undergraduate, I knew I wanted to go into graduate school, but I had some friends who really encouraged me to consider if I wanted to take a break. And there's like that hesitation about stepping away from school, because then you'll be some people might think that you're behind or something like that, and that's not the case. That's not the reality.
The stigma.
In a lot of senses, you might be like 10 times as fast as the people who are feeling really burned out from going directly from undergraduate then to graduate school. You're all refreshed and you're able to move, much quicker through your graduate work.
I couldn't agree more.
So that's how that I I feel like I'm able to move really fast.
Nice.
So yeah. And anyway, so during my time off, I was a
Mhm.
part of the conservation corps, and I just did manual
Oh, cool.
labor for 2 years, and
Nice.
then and I was doing like cutting down trees, spraying herbicide on weeds,
Hmm.
building trails. Got some leadership experience there, and
Awesome.
that rolled straight in. After that, I was dead set. I mean, after taking 2 years off, I knew for sure I wanted to get into academia as fast as I could,
Yeah.
and so now I'm here, and I'm sure that I hope that this will be my lifetime
Yeah.
career. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I'm with
Yeah.
you. Academia is a pretty cool lifestyle. You get
Yeah.
some flexibility, some solid autonomy over what you're doing, and um, it's cool to just always be learning. That's kind of like the goal, is always be learning about something else. There's something else to read about. There's something else to research, and that's kind of like in my opinion, the coolest part about this sort of track.
Yeah. Absolutely. So moving into some kind of like heavier topics, um, we got two other really interesting things to talk about, and that's the general atmosphere currently. We've had some very hotly disputed elections, still being disputed in the United
Yeah,
States by some, by some.
by some.
Uh,
Yes. Oh
uh,
man.
and we also have quite a bit of social unrest
Yeah.
happening over the unjust killings of Black people by police officers and others in the United
Hmm.
States. Um, and then at the same time, we have COVID,
Yep.
and we had the worst wildfire year on record. Pretty much everyone in
Yeah.
California has experienced the like really horrible air pollution as a result of that for lasted about a week or something like that,
Yeah.
and then just everything being shut down. Yeah. Anyways, so on that note,
Yeah.
how are things going for you? How have these what sorts of things have you really been active on?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, crazy times right now. So much going on. Um, with regard to the election stuff, and really just the last like 4 years, I've definitely found myself reading a heck of a lot more news,
Right.
which
Yeah,
is
me too.
good and bad. I definitely feel more informed than I used to be, but at the same time, I read so much stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, why is this happening?
Yeah.
But good to kind of understand a little better where the majority of the country sits, I suppose, or where we have like groups of people that think a certain way and such. Um, Definitely good to have like a realistic picture of that. I feel
Right.
like when I was living in Seattle, it's kind of like a very liberal bubble, so you get
Yep.
all of the great liberal ideals. And I won't lie, I'm very liberal. So
Yep.
it suited me well, but you definitely kind of lose track of like what's going on other places. Riverside, I feel like, is, I would say, probably more liberal leaning, but you definitely get a mixture of people with different opinions and different
Yeah.
backgrounds. And I've noticed that people in Riverside are really open to talking about this stuff, which I
Right.
really appreciate. I feel like kind of one of like the age old liberal problems that definitely took place in Seattle is like if you voiced any sort of alternate opinion, people would
Right.
pounce on you,
Yeah. Wow.
so which it can be detrimental for like trying to get a solid discourse going about anything
Yeah.
important.
It's
But
it's still, yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I tried to have a political civil discourse on Facebook, and that
mhm,
was the biggest mistake I ever
mm,
made. It was like every
yeah,
single, and it wasn't like, surprisingly, I was thinking, oh man, like the because I'm very liberal too, and so I was kind of worried that some of my conservative friends might consider what I'm doing as like a negative. I was just reaching out, like, let's have a discussion between like liberal and conservative minded people.
Yeah.
And so they actually, all of my conservative friends ended up taking it really well. They were like, wow, when you're so open-minded, you want to have a discussion with me, blah, blah, blah. All my liberal friends were like, hell no, we're not going to talk to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just like
Which is like, how are we going to
tore up
find
people.
common ground that way?
Yeah.
And
We
especially
need
with
to.
just like, oh, absolutely. Yeah. With the way things are going right now. And I mean, I kind of turning back to like the protests and stuff. It's been really cool to see all the support out there for what BLM's doing. And I know that, like, you know, there are obviously some controversies with the way some of the protests have gone down. And I would say for the most part, you know, the folks that are out there trying to make a change, they're not violent. They're not, you know, they're angry, and they should be. But, you know, I think the media definitely did some twisting of that whole sort of narrative.
Right.
But it's been cool to see all that support, and I'm super thankful to be in Sam's lab through this time, because she did something that was so cool that I don't know how many other PIs would do something like this, but we took like the first kind of like month and a half of after the protests kind of broke out. Instead of doing our lab meeting, we were doing like anti-racism readings and like discussing all this stuff pretty openly, just in our like taking our lab meeting time, and like we were doing like journal club with an book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. That was pretty interesting. And just, you know, we watched like white fragility lectures and all kinds of stuff. So it was definitely eye-opening and like nice to, you know, I don't know if you feel this way, but you know, I'm kind of a more liberal leaning person. I like to think that I don't have any racist tendencies, but I think one of the things that we've kind of come away with from this whole thing is that we all have places where we can improve. You know, we all have done things just as a result of like living in a society that is definitely biased towards certain folks based on the color of their skin, that, you know, we all have areas to improve on. And so it was nice to just kind of like think about it from a more systemic perspective of how, you know, even someone liberal leaning who doesn't feel racist may still, you know, be contributing to the problem in sometimes even more detrimental ways, because it's just more hidden and more subverted. So that was definitely, you know, it's nice to have support in our lab for you know, finding space to grow and everyone kind of being on their own page. And I actually got to go out to Seattle at the beginning of those protests, which was pretty cool. And I was out there for like 2 weeks, and they had this awesome thing going where there were a bunch of there's a really big like bicycling community out there. And so they had this thing called the Seattle Bike Brigade, which used to just be like a crew of people that just like mobbed around with like 50 or 100 bikes or whatever, and they just kind of like, you know, biked around and had fun. But then when the protests broke out, they actually like took their network and turned it into a blockade system, basically, where they had it all organized. So like the bikes would basically like block busy streets for the protests, so that they didn't have to like deal with asking the police or whatever, or coordinating with police to like blockade off busy streets when those big protests were taking place, it was super cool to be a part of that. And it was awesome to see folks kind of just being like, and it was a lot of like white folks that were part of the bike brigade, and they were all just kind of like hands off, like let the people of color kind of take the lead and just be like, this is what we want you to do. We don't want you to like talk to anybody, just block traffic and let the march go on. So that was a really kind of powerful experience to be able to see some of that firsthand.
I'm really glad to hear that you're a part of that. And thank you so much for sharing all that. I totally agree that we all do racist things sometimes, and we need to work on not doing that and being more. I've been reading this book about how to be an anti-racist, and trying to figure out how to combat racism within myself. And when I see it other places too. Really, yeah. So reflecting on some of my experiences there, actually, Andy, my advisor, did a similar thing as your advisor did. He also,
Nice.
and we've been doing like updated kind of. We have I think it's every other week right now. We have a
Yeah.
meeting that's just dedicated to like talking about our values, our shared values, and talking about things like this. And
Yeah.
right now we're reading through the book How to Be an
Hmm.
Anti-Racist, so that's been really
Nice.
good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's such a good thing for PIs to take some time to do.
Yeah,
Because honestly, you don't just come to graduate school to like learn how to become a researcher. You want to learn how to like think unobjectively and how to process information better, basically. So it's cool to like to see PIs really caring about it and
yeah,
being willing to discuss some not very easy to discuss topics.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wish that the values within science, within academia, how the value system is structured, incentivize stuff like this. But
Agreed.
it just doesn't yet.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we need to create more of a culture within academia that incentivizes diversity, incentivizes inclusion, incentivizes equity, and all of these things.
Hmm.
Um, and right now, our only metric for success is how many papers you can write, and
Yep.
that has very little to do with. Sometimes, if you're more racist, that can mean that
Yeah.
you're able
It
to
it doesn't have as
do
much.
more of that. Yeah,
Yes. No, I agree. The number of papers you put out doesn't really speak to your character as a human
no,
being. So
yeah,
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 agreed.
yeah, yeah. When everything first started happening, actually, I was having a pretty big like mental breakdown. At that time, I was totally locked off and like isolated, and
Mm,
yeah, I wasn't able to take part in any of the protests.
yeah.
But I'm feeling a lot better now, and
Hmm.
so I've been
I'm glad to hear
a
that.
part of some groups where we're talking about like in addition to my being a part of my lab and stuff,
Hmm.
we've been talking about. I've been a part of some other groups that are talking about racism and combating. Specifically, this one group that I'm part of is talking about white male violence and
Hmm.
how do we recognize our own violence and how do we
Hmm.
stop it from happening. So yeah, so it's been pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm glad to hear you're feeling better and happier with things now. That's
yeah, yeah,
COVID's been like the mental health impacts of just being, kind of squared away and locked away in your own space and, being told that you're not supposed to go out and see people and that you're just kind of a lot more isolated than ever before. So it's
right,
to be taken seriously, the emotional impacts of just being locked away with COVID and such.
yep. Um, so how have you been coping with your own mental health during this time and keeping yourself balanced and focused?
Yeah. I think for everyone it's been challenging. Trying to find that balance is definitely a challenge. Getting outside and going surfing has been good. Try to go to the skate park like once or twice a week if I can find time in the evenings.
Nice.
Just because for me, getting physical movement just means so much. It's like going for just taking some time in the morning to like go for a bike ride or like take some time at the end of the day to go skateboard or take the dog on a long walk or something. That's like really been the major, or get out and go surfing, whatever it is, just as long as I'm like moving, that helps a lot. And I actually find that I'm like more productive when I do those kinds of things. Like if I go for like a 20-mile bike ride in the morning and then sit down to work, I'll just like sit and work through the whole day. Whereas if I try to like get up and sit and work, I'll get so distracted so easily. Oh look, I'll well, started working for a little bit. Maybe I'll play guitar for like 20 minutes. Okay, I'll go back to working. I'm kind of hungry. Maybe I'll go make a sandwich. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like too easy to distract yourself. But yeah, it's been weird times. I've been trying to just reach out to people as much as possible. Has been kind of one of the big mental health things that I've been focusing on. Just like I have a lot of really good friends back home in Seattle and my family, and like I'll just try to call people out of the blue more often and just chat about life, you know, like how are things going? What's up with you? What are you doing these days? You done anything fun lately? You know, and just kind of like keep up a little bit more of like a distance relationship, which is not really something that I've ever been super good at. But, you know, I have a lot of friends back home that are, you know, I'm going to be friends with them forever. I already know that.
Right.
So just like taking the time and putting the effort to just, you know, reach out and, you know, let people know how much I care about them, and just, you know, take as much advantage of this virtual world that we have now. Like I can't even imagine COVID coming through before we had like cell phones and Zoom and email and all that. It's like it would be a whole heck of a lot harder to get anything done and to just like stay connected with people in any meaningful way.
Right. Yeah, that's been a good. Those have all been really good lifelines for me too, for sure.
Nice.
So kind of wrapping up with a final topic of discussion that's a little bit lighter, so we can end on a happier note. I'd love
That sounds
to hear
good to me.
about your experience. So your mom co-founded a nonprofit in Guatemala, and you've been there several times. And I'd love to hear about what you've done there and what your mom's working on and everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I just got to plug my mom because she's an amazing person. Probably
Yeah.
one of the most selfless people that I know. She goes way the heck out of her way to try to do good for people. Sometimes too much so, but you know, with a big heart. But yeah, so my little sister is actually adopted from Guatemala. When she was 6 months old, she was adopted, and you know she's been with us ever since. So that was kind of the initial connection to Guatemala. And then you know it's a very different place. There's a lot less opportunity, a lot less, or you know, very extreme wealth differences between folks living in communities that are kind of just like off the grid, up a dirt road in a, you know, areas where you're drinking water from wells, and it's just surrounded by agricultural activity, and you're living in like a hut with a dirt floor. You know, it's just a very different situation. But so they ended up starting this nonprofit to kind of try to bring a family medicine type based healthcare approach to some of these really rural villages. And it's been cool because they do a really good job working with community leaders. So they have like comadronas are what they're called, and they're like health promoters basically that live in these different communities. And so like it's nice because, or one of the things that I think they do really well is, so they create like kind of a clinic that reoccurs every like, I think it's every 6 months. And then there's folks working in country that will go and like refill prescriptions every 6 or 8 weeks or something like that in each of these villages. Because a lot of them are pretty far from, you know, any hospital or anything, any decent medical care. And so one of the things they do really well is they really work with the community leaders and kind of ask like, what do you want out of this? Because like we're here to try to help, but you know, we are, you know, white Western people, and we don't know what you really want. So I think they do a good job kind of trying to address that like the white saviorism thing is not something to be forgotten about. And you know, it's really the folks living there that are going to have the better idea of what they need. But yeah, so it's been cool because it's kind of like a family affair. Like my sister travels all the time. My brother's been, my mom for a long time was going every 6 months. I've probably been 3 times maybe now. So it's nice because it's like you get to go out there, and at this point we've like basically have family out there who we've spent Christmases with them, and like we had a young man come live with us in Seattle when I was in high school for a year and a half, and we still see him frequently when we're out there. So it's just kind of a nice little community that goes along with it, which has been kind of a big part of my life for a long time. And someday I would love to like try to figure out some way to entwine the like water quality work that I'm doing with my PhD to try to like tie into that somehow. And actually, one of the reasons that I got so drawn to Sam's lab was she had written a paper a while back where they looked at arsenic leaching from ceramic water filters, which is a
Right.
super low cost water filter system that you can use, in pretty far out places, where they basically just like take a clay pot, put sawdust in it, and bake it, and then that clay or the sawdust turns into biochar essentially. And then they
Right.
put like some antimicrobial like silver lining basically on the inside, and so it's like really great for knocking out bacteria, but at the same time like some of those clays have naturally occurring arsenic in them, which could potentially leach out. And so she had written this paper all about that, about arsenic mobilization in these filters. And I'm thinking to myself like my mom's nonprofit had been working with a group that was doing like basically distributing these filters, because the big problem was you drink water with too much bacteria, you get sick, and it was responsible for killing a lot of infants. But then it's one of those classic environmental issues where you solve one problem and you might be creating another, by manipulating your natural system, or in this case by taking your water and filtering it through something that might have other like trace metal contaminants in it. So it'd be cool to do something with that maybe. I don't know, but that definitely helped pull me in. I was like, oh man, this Sam's doing some research that applies to something that I kind of know about. This is great.
Yeah. Does your mom spend a lot of time out in Guatemala?
She does. Yeah, she just recently, well, this was kind of a very unfortunate COVID timing situation,
Right.
but she had been awarded a Fulbright scholarship
Wow.
to work with she's a family doctor, and she had been awarded a Fulbright scholarship to work with one of the universities in Guatemala City to try to help develop a family medicine program. So kind of like some more preventative type medicine.
Right.
Because right now a lot of what they do out there is kind of just like, here's a problem, deal with it, rather than like here's something that might become a problem later on. So let's try to jump on it earlier, and then it's better outcome for the person, also a heck of a lot cheaper. But yeah, so she had this Fulbright to go out there and do that, try to develop some sort of family medicine program with the university. And that was like a month after she got there, and then she was supposed to be there for 6 months, and then like a month after COVID got really bad, and they like pretty much evac'd her on a big plane with a bunch of
Oh,
other like Americans and like nationals that weren't from Guatemala. So it was kind of a crazy time, like talking to her through basically getting evacuated out of Guatemala at that time. But
wow.
she does spend a lot of time down there, typically, and so I know she's trying to like go back and try to finish that work at some point. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely super unfortunate timing.
Hopefully, is that funding source still available and stuff? Are they like putting it on hold for now, or how's that working out?
Yeah, I think I think not. I think there's some weird deal with how the Fulbright works, where like if you get a Fulbright, you're not allowed to get another Fulbright.
Oh,
And
dang it.
I should talk to her more about it, but I think there was
Yeah.
some issue where like
Yeah.
they might still have the money, but definitely like she doesn't have the 6 months off of work to go do it the same way she would
Right.
have been able to. Like it kind of fell. So I think she took her sabbatical, and her sabbatical was supposed to be this time that she spent there, and then COVID hit. And so it's just, I think she spent a lot of time just kind of hanging out at home. Um, But now she also works at a youth care facility in Seattle. So I think
Oh,
she just ended up taking a bunch of time to focus more on that. My sister actually works there now too. I just found out. She's been working there for like a month, so pretty cool. But
wow. Well, that's really unfortunate to hear that funding might not be available, but I'm sure she'll find something else. Yeah, there's been a lot of things like from COVID that have been disrupted, especially these.
yeah,
Yeah, I was supposed to be in
absolutely.
India
Oh man.
right now, doing research actually
Oh
for a
no.
project that's going to be funding my postdoc
Oh
position,
nice.
and yeah, obviously that's not happening. So
Yeah, man.
not
I'm
for a
sorry to hear
while,
that.
anyways.
Is it's kind of just on hold then, or it'll still be
uh,
there?
I don't know
Hopefully.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it will still be there. We're hoping maybe next summer. It's like a
Okay.
3-year funding source, so we still need to
Okay.
talk through all the details. But
Yeah.
um, I've been doing everything remotely, just kind of like
Yeah.
basically getting myself prepared to be there. But
Yeah.
since I can't actually be there, there's a lot of things that I just can't really even start until I've gotten like some basic data to run with it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Man. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it's still like able to happen. That's pretty cool though. So it's funding that starts in your PhD work and it funds you into a postdoc.
yep. Yeah. So
Oh,
it's
that's
actually
awesome.
the funding. I'm funded from a different source right now during my PhD.
Mhm.
The funding
Okay.
that's coming right now has been funding an undergraduate in our lab to do a lot
Okay.
of the actual work. So, and then it would roll in. Then we
Okay.
set it up so that it will roll in where I'll get paid for my or for my postdoc once I finish my PhD. Hopefully, that'll be next summer too. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's super exciting. Really cool to like already have your next step kind of planned out. I think that you're kind of like a step ahead of the game, right?
I'm very lucky, very lucky for sure. Yeah, I so I've never been to Guatemala before. What are your like? What are your favorite places out there?
Oh yeah. The city's pretty cool. There's a lot of fun stuff happening in the city. Um, but there's a region. Well, yeah, we've kind of spent some time going all over the place. I'm trying to think of like I'm gonna look at a map real quick because I always
Yeah.
forget. Antigua is pretty cool. That's like was the former capital, and it's kind of got like a little bit more Spanish influence. So a lot of color in the buildings, and it's surrounded by like 3
Oh wow,
volcanoes. So that's incredibly
sweet.
beautiful. And there's a lot of like art and good food, and they've even started like a brewery scene, which is pretty surprising. So they've been brewing all kinds of like microbrew beer, and every time I go back there, I feel like it's grown like 20 years, and it's only been like 2 years, so it's kind
Wow.
of a cool space. And then Lake Atitlan is also incredibly beautiful. It's this like really massive, deep lake, and there's just all kinds of like beautiful jungle around it, and that's a cool area as well. But if
Oh
you can
man.
ever make your way down there, it's pretty cheap to travel, and people are really friendly, and the food is good, and food fan. But yeah, it's a cool country, very pretty, lots of volcanoes, and it's kind of narrow. It's below
Yeah.
Mexico and like south of Belize, and it's cool because they have a Caribbean side and a Pacific Ocean side, and you could drive
Oh wow.
across it in a day.
Wow.
So it's like you kind of get a little bit of everything. There's some towns like just south of Belize, Caribbean. It's like Rastafari and everything, and like all kinds of like beautiful crystal clear water, and it's a kind of a trip, but very cool space.
Yeah.
Where in India? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That sounds beautiful. India. So I was going to be in Varanasi. I've been there before. I
Okay.
did my undergraduate research in Varanasi actually, with a group
Okay.
called the Waste Warriors. And then,
Cool.
um, and then when I started graduate school, I'm just obsessed with India, honestly. And, yeah, when you were talking earlier
Yeah.
about the like making sure that you're you're not becoming a white savior, I reflect
Mhm.
on that a lot with the work that I do in India too. Just
Yeah.
always thinking about how can I make sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons, that I'm here
Totally.
for the right reasons, and that I'm not taking somebody else's space, and that I'm like
Uh-huh.
actually being, you know, useful. Um,
Totally.
and and so for me, the reason I go to India is because I'm just totally obsessed with India.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
love it there. I love the people. I love the food.
Hmm.
I love the customs. Um,
Hmm.
it's just feels very freeing,
Yeah.
being in India. It feels like, you can do anything you want to do,
Yeah.
and I love that. So, anyways, yeah, and also the Himalayan mountains are always they're calling my name
Yeah.
even today. I want to be back. Varanasi isn't in the
Yep.
Himalayan mountains, but where I did my undergraduate research was just like every morning wake up with these like sheer rock faces that are, higher in elevation than like anything in the world, and that's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really great.
That sounds
It's a really
unreal.
great place to be. So yeah, and
Yeah.
in Varanasi is super culturally interesting place. It's a very
Hmm.
important, religious pilgrimage location for many Indians. That's where, their people take their dead to uh, do like funeral pyres or bury them, do different,
Oh, okay.
religious celebrations for them. Also, lots of like always some big wedding happening there and stuff. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I hope to be able to go
So,
soon.
yes. Hopefully, it sounds like we're looking promising with vaccine development now. Just distribution is going to be the rate limiting step here.
Yep.
But hopefully, come summertime, we're looking at a different situation. Is what
Yeah,
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
that's right.
But that's awesome that you've figured out a way to travel somewhere you love at the same time as doing research that you care about. That's the dream, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's definitely the dream for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you share that dream. I want to
Yeah.
make my research take me all around the world and
Oh yeah,
explore and experience as much as I can while I'm doing good science. So yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
You kind of strike me as the kind of person that would like to travel or has traveled, you know, relatively far and wide. Are there any other places aside from India that you've been that you're super psyched on, or places you want to go?
Um, yeah. So I have been to quite a few places. Not a ton of countries outside of the United
Hmm.
States. I mean, I've been to like China for a week and been to Canada
Nice.
for a week and stuff like that, but not. I've mostly traveled really extensively within the United States. One place that I went to outside of the
Hmm.
United States that was really cool was Estonia. It's
Yeah.
in Eastern Europe.
Interesting.
It's a very small
Okay.
country, and the people there are some of the nicest, and most talented, computer scientists there. They have like huge tech
Really?
industry. You wouldn't even, I mean, a
Okay.
lot of people don't even know about Estonia, um, but they are a tech powerhouse and they're really great to work with. I've worked with
Nice.
some groups. They have a group called Let's Do It World out there, And I've gotten to go to
Okay.
Estonia twice now to go to their conferences. And
That's awesome.
it's a really old country. Like they have like
Yeah.
stone castles and stuff still, you know, like these
Yeah.
stone buildings, and cobblestone streets and everything like that. It's very historic. It's like, whoa, where I was just like
Hmm.
stepped into the medieval times or something. And at the same
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
everyone's driving a Tesla and is like
Yeah.
hooked into the fastest internet you've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's nuts.
yeah.
Like collision of two worlds right there.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done much traveling out that way, but someday I'd love to go to
Yeah.
like Finland or Sweden.
Yeah,
That'd be
me
really cool.
too. Me too. I've just like stopped on my way to Estonia. I just like stopped in the airport.
Hmm.
I don't count it.
Yeah, it doesn't count. Not unless you set foot outside.
Yeah, yeah. Gotta have a story to tell or something.
Oh yeah. Yes. Luckily there's lots of time for all kinds of traveling.
Yeah.
We're still young, you know.
Yep.
We got a
Yep.
lot of life left to
Plenty of
find
time.
research projects to do in other places and to just like take time off and go explore.
Yeah. I'm very jealous of the research papers that I read where people are like, I went to every single continent and collected samples. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How? Like, how did
That's
you get
yeah.
somebody to fund this research? I want somebody to fund that research. That sounds
Yes.
awesome.
Yes. Yep. I want to see everything at the same time as I'm doing my job. That would be
Yeah.
just the best.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to rethink my ideas for my PhD proposal.
Right. Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
try to figure out some way to travel more.
I'm sure Sam will have plenty of ideas for you. She traveled
Oh
quite a
yeah,
bit during her graduate work.
she did. Yeah, she's good about that. She's that same mentality. Like, I want to do research that I care about in a place that I want to explore, which is like,
Yeah.
I don't know. When I first talked to Sam, I was kind of just like, oh, this is the kind of person I could really get along with. And she's like wicked smart. And I've already learned so much from her. It's like, and very laid back, which is nice and like hands off. It's just a good
Yeah.
fit. But
Definitely.
yeah, she sent Macon to Germany. Miranda was
Wow.
supposed to go to Barcelona, but I think that was kind of right at the beginning of COVID, unfortunately.
Oh man.
So that got canceled. But maybe
Well,
it'll happen again. I don't
yeah,
know.
sounds like you're next. You're
Yeah,
next in line for sure.
we got
Somebody's
we
going
got to get.
somewhere.
Yes, definitely. We got to get Miranda the rebuttal trip first. But
Right.
yeah, I have more years than she does left. So
Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode, and
Certainly.
I'll be sharing this throughout all the social media channels and on email to our department.
Sweet.
Is there any social media like uh, channels that you have that you want people to use to reach out to you?
I have an Instagram. I might have a Facebook still. I don't think I've been on it in a few years now. um, but yeah, I have Instagram. That's
Oh,
kind of all
cool. What's your
I'm running these
Instagram
days.
name?
It's Detective Mike Lowry from
Nice.
Bad Boys,
All right.
but it's spelled all funky. I think it's also linked to my real name. So if you like searched Benjamin Maki, it would probably pop up.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. I'll share it. And
Sweet.
yeah, and our Twitter channel is at UC underscore science. So that's our Twitter channel. All right. Thanks again. I'm gonna pause this recording. Let's see
Certainly.
here.
Thank you.